Hello, BookTube. I had occasion today to go to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. Those of you who are new to the channel and haven't heard me natter on about it, it's a great used bookstore in the heart of downtown Boston. 3 stories, and the lot next door is full of sale carts, hundreds and hundreds of books, priced at $1, $3, and $5. And they change all the time. There's a constant turnover both in the lot and in the store itself. So every visit to the Brattle is new. No matter how often you go, I can speak from experience. There was a long period where I went to the Brattle. I worked right up the street at a bookstore, and I went to the Brattle literally every day on my lunch rather than eat, and always saw something new. I never left empty-handed. And I don't work up the street from the Brattle anymore. I don't go there as often as I used to. I fell out of the habit and fell out of the routine, and I have yet to pick it up again, and that's just as well, because I'm trying to decrease the number of books that I have. I know it looks crazy considering my background, but ideally what I would like, those of you who've been here to Hyde Cottage will know how far away from this mark I am. Ideally, what I would like is for all the books in my personal library to fit in this room. And they don't. They spill over into other rooms. And I'd rather that not be true. I don't think anyone needs a personal library any bigger than what would fit in a little room like this, provided every inch is used. And right now, the way I have the room set up, every inch of wall space is used for books. But nevertheless, the going to the Brattle is fun. I know everybody there. We have a great time. And also, the hunting is fun. Even if I get almost nothing. Even if I get nothing. The hunting is still fun. Seeing all the books, pulling them off their shelves and rummaging through them, looking to see what they are. If I find one that I don't recognize, that's a lot of fun. And today, when I was there, as I was walking up to the lot, I thought, you should test your resolve to get fewer and fewer books. You should test that resolve by looking at the Brattle sale carts and restricting how much you get to things you either know you want or, to things you know you want. No experiments, no buying gifts for people who haven't shown up in your life yet. No, nothing like that. And I tried it today. I think I was moderately successful. I got 3 books, which is, first of all, it's a pittance of money. And second, it's a small number for me in my history with the Brattle. I wanted to show you the 3 books I got, because they're all, I think, keepers, which is just what I want. Unless I'm buying ephemera to help with a review, or unless I'm buying something for someone else, what I would like to do from now on at the Brattle and every other used venue is get only keepers, things I know I want. And the first one I got is definitely that. It's a UK trade paperback. I love them so much. It's the UK Picador. It's Tribes with Flags by Charles Glass in a lovely trade paperback edition that only took a little reinforcing, and now it'll hold up just fine. And the hardcover, I do see the American hardcover quite a bit, and it's much bigger and it's much heavier, and it also has a portrait of our author on the cover that is significantly more romantic than that. It's an oil painting of our author looking pensive and very young. And it irritates me when I see it, for reasons I can make a whole video on this particular author. But this one is much nicer. It's just a painting. It's an old painting of this is a I think it came out in 1980. It's a long travel writing memoir of the author's trip. He wanted to trace the old roots of the Ottoman Empire in what was then called the Levant, and just go from country to country, meet the people, talk to everyone, meet leaders, meet rebels, and sit in cafes and absorb the intellectual life and all that. And he's a little way through that journey when suddenly in Lebanon he's kidnapped by pro-Iranian militiamen. And, despite the fact that by then he was a practiced international journalist, he worried for his life. And they kept him in an apartment, and when his captors fell asleep, he snuck out. And that was his kidnap story. A little bit anticlimactic, but at least he lived. And that is sort of the dramatic linchpin of the book. And the reason that I don't have a copy. Every time I get that hardcover with the pensive picture of Charlie Glass on the cover, I always find somebody to give it to. And the reason why I give it to people is the same reason I was happy to get it, which is because I hate to say it, but even an egotistical author can be right. It's a classic. It's an absolute classic of travel writing. It's a great work of 20th century nonfiction. There's a blurb on the back of this UK edition from Miles Copeland, writing in the Evening Standard. I am a lifetime admirer of T.E. Lawrence, but I can't help but remark what a great book his 7 Pillars of Wisdom would have been if he had been as gifted a writer as Charles Glass. I can only hope that 35 years ago a significant pile of money exchanged hands in order to produce a blurb of such unbelievable absurdity. But even so, this book deserves to be on the same shelf as 7 Pillars of Wisdom. And now I have it in a little sturdy paperback that will suit me just fine until the next time I see, a 25-cent copy of the American hardcover with our pensive author, and probably break down and buy it. But in the meantime, I have this, and when I was looking it over at the Brattle, I realized it's been a long time since I reread this. So it's high time I did. I know that I will like it. All of these things I intend to reread. The next one connects with the subject, a much vexed subject on this channel, the subject of Steve's garden. There's a little patch of ground. I stress little. There's a little patch of ground underneath the window where I work, right next to the bird bath and right underneath the lilac tree, right alongside the house. The drain pipe from the roof drains right to this patch of ground. There's sunlight all day long, but also some shade. And no one uses it, and no one wants to use it. And it has been used in the past. Tenants have used it in the past as a garden. So I know that it will bear. I know that it will produce. It's not dead soil or whatever. But the idea of seriously getting into gardening, learning what it's all about, learning how to do it, learning what I want to grow, and then actually doing it struck me too late, I thought, in the season. A lot of you who are gardening fans were telling me, no, you're not too late. You can plant sweet potatoes, for instance, and have them in a few weeks. But nevertheless, I want to read more. I want to study more. I want to watch more videos that contradict each other. I want to study the ground, too, a little more. I think what I will do is study up on how to prepare that little patch of ground for the winter. And then, first thing in the early spring, I will take all the advice in the world from online, from books, and from you, and make my garden next spring. I think that's what I'll do. Unless I can learn about winter gardening and see if there's anything of interest there. I don't really know. I don't think considering how skittish I am about the cold these days, I don't think I have any interest in winter gardening. But spring will be soon enough. I don't think I'm going to do anything with that ground until then, which gives me time to read to my heart's content. And when you mention gardening, for a non-gardener, there's one book comes immediately to my mind, and when the gardening subject came up here at Hyde Cottage, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to be digging into this ground. I'm going to have to, get some sort of a trowel or something to dig the ground. And I decided right away that I want to do all the work myself. A lot of you were assuring me that it's perfectly all right to get muscular teenagers to do it for me. But no, I want to do every bit of it myself. I want to get the seeds. I want to till the ground. I want to prepare the lot. I want to do all of it myself. And we'll just see what kind of success I have. But when I was thinking about it, the first book that came to mind is a book that's not very useful practically for gardening. Certainly at the Brattle, now that I have eyes to see them, I see dozens and dozens of practical gardening books out on the sale lot. I ignored them before, but there are dozens of them there. In fact, in between now and the late winter, I really should amass a kind of library so that I can do a lot of reading. I ought to set a shelf aside here and just do that, even though that flies directly in the face of my thinking about reducing my books. But one way or another, the book in question is this. It's a classic. It's Catherine White's Onward and Upward in the Garden. She was an editor at the New Yorker for decades, and towards the end of her time as editor at the New Yorker, she started writing these long personal essays about gardening, weird idiosyncratic aspects of gardening. The one that got everybody's attention is when she writes a long piece reviewing seed catalogs. Not telling you what luck she had with the produces of those catalogs, but reviewing their prose. It's still great to read. It is a bravura performance even now. But there's so much else of delight in here. Catherine Wright never stopped gardening for her whole life. Just took it as her husband E.B. White writes in the introduction to this book. She took it as just a matter of course. You cook meals, you have a bath, you garden, you do these things. These are the normal staples of life. And I don't know, something about that appeals to me. The idea of growing onions that I can eat, potatoes that I can eat, that idea very much appeals to me. So this won't help me doing any of that at all. There were plenty of books I saw today that would have helped me, but they wouldn't have had this prose. And now I have a copy of Onward and Upward in the Garden. Whether I ever get any other gardening, whatever I'm not to do any gardening, I'll still have this book, which is a classic. It is a keeper. And then the next book is also a keeper. It's a great product of its genre, and I would have gotten it anyway, but that genre also took a hit recently on a booktube channel that shall be nameless. A booktuber referred to the genre of biography as I can scarcely make myself say it. Boring. So, of course, when I went to the Brattle today, I was in the mood for a big, fat biography, and there were a bunch of them. I tried to restrain myself. I only got one. And it's one that first appeared just as Open Letters was starting, the literary journal where I was the managing editor for 10 years. Just as it was starting, when our reach had not yet expanded. We had not yet produced anything that anyone was reading or quoting or linking or anything like that. And so the number of books that we got, advanced copies of books that we got, was still fairly small. I tried my hardest. I remembered what it was like to be on an arts journal. I remembered the flood of review copies, and I wanted it to recommence. But it hadn't quite. I worked every day to do that, but it hadn't quite started yet. So I remember this book. I remember it coming out. I read it when my library finally got it, and when all the old fogies who had reserved it first were done with it. And I read all the book reviews about it. It came out to universal praise. And then I saw nothing of it, and then I saw a brand new, perfect condition hardcover copy today. So I grabbed it. It's Hugh Brogan's big biography of Alexis de Tocqueville. The author of Democracy in America, one of the quintessential American classics, as was not written by an American. I really liked this book. It is told in just the way that a biography should. Hugh Brogan studied everything about de Tocqueville, and then wrote the book at headlong speed. The time he wrote this, he was a professor emeritus at Trinity or something like that. All the earmarks were there. This thing's enormous. All the earmarks were there of a big, long, boring biography, and this is not at all. There's no fat anywhere on it. Just wonderful. And also, I remember this was a long time ago that I read it. I'll read it again soon. But if I remember correctly, there was a very refreshing lack of windy theorizing. Ordinarily, biographers, who write big tomes like this, their introduction and their afterword in the book are designed to summarize the subject. Here's, so-and-so was the revolution on horseback. Here we have the environmental movement in embryo, all that sort of stuff. It's designed to sort of the dinner conversation version of the book. And Hugh Brogan decides, I think, that is not necessary. That if you don't know who de Tocqueville is, and if you don't know why he's important enough to warrant a book this long, then you probably won't read the book anyway. It's a very sanguine look at things I like very much. And when I was bringing this back here and looking it through and getting ready, mentally figuring out when I'm going to devote the time to read it, I had a horrible realization. There is a definitive annotated edition of Democracy in America. Some of you will know the version I mean. It's kind of an olive green in both the hardcover and the trade paperback. It's the version of Democracy in America to have, and when I was bringing this back here, I realized I don't have it. In fact, I don't have any edition of Democracy in America by de Tocqueville. Crazy. So that's another thing I have to keep an eye out for at the Brattle. But that's the nice thing about the Brattle, is that you can realistically, in real time, keep an eye out for things because they will appear in short order. In fact, for all I know, the person who sold this to the Brattle also sold him a copy of that. I think it was the University of Chicago edition of Democracy in America. One way or another, though, I used to have it. And when I got back here, just to double check my worst impulses, I looked around and it's nowhere to be found. I do not have it. I must have given it to somebody. Maybe I gave it to a foreign visitor who wanted a book to help them understand America. That is a big mistake. I used to do that all the time. That is a big mistake. I have stopped doing that because Democracy in America will not help a foreigner to understand America at all. Americans don't read it anymore, and the America that's captured so perfectly in its pages has vanished completely, no matter what New York Times windbags will tell you. so if somebody wants a book that captures America, I give them City of Quartz instead and just let it go at that. Let the chips fall where they may. So there you go. That was a controlled, reasonable trip to the Brattle bookstore. 3 books. Hugh Brogan's biography of Alexis de Tocqueville, because biography is not boring. Catherine White's Onward and Upward in the Garden, a classic that is not really about gardening. It's really about being a gardener. And Charles Glass's Tribes with Flags in a UK trade paperback. So there's 3 books that I know I want, as opposed to my usual routine with the Brattle is to just get 16 or 17 books, only some of which I know I want, and use it as a lending library. And then these things are stuck here, and I have to get rid of them. So I'm moderately pleased with this trip. And I'll keep you abreast of whether or not I can do this a second time. That's the key to self-control, is whether or not you can do it a second time. So I will go to the Brattle maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday, and see if I can duplicate this success. But in the meantime, I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.